I'm going to call us to order here at 6:10. I think we can proceed pretty quickly through this agenda, especially with the small group here. I'm prepared to waive introductions. I think we've all met. Ellie and Steve, have you met before? Okay, then I think we're all introduced already. So unless there's any objections, I'm going to move right past introductions. Ellie has kindly volunteered to be our new clerk. I
would like to move to accept Ellie as our new clerk.
Chair, here's a motion. Do I get a second?
Second.
Second by Steve Hussey. All in favor? Rachel, yay. Linda.
Linda, yay.
Steve.
Yay.
And Christy.
Yay.
And Ellie, how do you vote for yourself? Very good. Congratulations. You are our new clerk. Thank you very much for taking on that role. I realize it's not the most pleasant one in any organization, but important here. I see no members of the public in attendance. Do any of you have any non-committee type announcements or committee type announcements that aren't on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to...
Rachel?
Oh, yeah.
My video is not showing, but you guys can see me?
Yeah.
Okay. That's weird, but that's okay. Hopefully I'm not making funny faces because I can't see myself. But I would like to nominate Linda officially to be chair. I did talk to her a little bit. I know that we had talked about that last meeting. I didn't see it specifically on the agenda, but while we're making motions and nominating, I thought we should do that right away.
Fantastic, because mine was going to be that I was going to re-announce my intention to resign as chair. So, Linda, do you accept that nomination?
Yeah, I accept, but I will say, what I'd like to do is do it just for a couple years to bring the committee into shape and sort of build it, get some more members who are downtown folks. With solid ideas, and like Ellie has done this great thing about formalizing the way proposals are offered and all that stuff. So I don't want to do it forever, but I'll do it. And because Rachel, nobody deserves a break more than you, honey. You've done so much. We're so grateful for you.
You're already chairing the GLCC, so it's...
Well, I go off really soon on that. So this will be my, I go off next year on that. And so this will be my final connection with the city of Greenfield. So I'm happy to do it, sweetie. Happy to do it.
Sounds good to me. I think you should, you'll be chair, so you decide, but I think you should plan on trying for a 1-year term and see if anybody else will take it. Certainly 2 tops, but
great. Actually, do we have term limits on our stuff here? I can't remember. No. Okay.
I'm not aware of anything. We do need to have a chair, though, I think, right?
Yes, we have to have a chair. Yeah.
That's what I thought. So, well, I have a motion on the table to elect a new chair. No reason we can't take that. MJ can't second because you're not on the committee. Oh, Steve has seconded once again for the record. Thank you, Steve. Rachel votes yay. Ellie, how do you vote?
Yay.
Linda?
Yay.
Steve?
Yay.
And Christy?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rachel, for your years of service as well.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Really, look what you've done. I mean, we really should take a moment and make note in the minutes to call attention to the leadership that Rachel has brought to bear to this committee and the incredible progress that has been made, and the not to leave out the fact that she oversaw, created, was the artist, and implemented the largest public art installation in the history of Greenfield, Massachusetts.
Wow.
Oh, golly.
Just saying, bitches.
Yeah.
Oops. There's your edit, Ellie.
Wait till you see what I say when you retire. Thank you. You're truly too kind. It has been my pleasure to serve. And Linda, we can, meet at any point before the next meeting to have a little bit of a handoff and just, I'm sure it's a nothing
you.
burger for you, but we'll
And do
just
I
make sure.
understand that you'll be remaining upon the committee, but just will be stepping
I
back as chair? Okay,
I
great.
would be happy to continue to serve on the committee, and of course,
Thank
we'll
you.
advise you wherever you need it along the way.
I need a lot of advice, girl. Whew.
I'm happy to help.
Go in the minutes.
So noted.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Christy, thank
Moving
you for the
on.
vote of confidence.
We're gonna
Really
try to
appreciate
set a
it.
record here on this one if we can. We have minutes from both the September meeting and the July meeting. We weren't able to approve the July minutes in August because we weren't in quorum, and in September we was 2 months old and we just didn't remember to have them with us. So we do.
I've read them both and they seem perfect. So I would just drive ahead and throw out a motion to accept July and the July and August 2021 minutes to the Crossroads Cultural District meetings.
And I will be happy to once again second.
Actually,
Did you find something, Christy?
yeah, it would be July 12th and September 21st. There were no August meetings. Just
Oh,
to
sorry. Okay.
In the
get the
minutes.
motion correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Sure.
correction.
Yeah, that would be the July and September minutes. Thank you, Christy. Okay, Rachel, yay. Ellie?
Yay.
Linda, yay.
Okay.
Steve?
Yay.
And Christy.
Yay.
All right, our minutes are duly accepted and will be entered into the permanent record. And moving to our next line item, annual funding grant. So here's where we are with that. I'll give a quick update. Linda, if you want to add any details, feel free. We believed we were working under a deadline of October 15th, hence the rush to get our priorities set at last meeting. Linda and I met once, as well as a conference call with the artist for the under the railroad lighting project. Nailed down the parameters of that project, checked that pricing was still good because the original work was done some years ago, and we're basically prepared to write the grant. I also got information from Christy and ultimately from the other project that we were funding as well, the alleyway mosaic project. Thank you. That one took a little bit of back and forth because there still seemed to be a bit of an misunderstanding in terms of how projects are actually moved forward, and the presenter of that project thought that they were going to be done by giving me the email address of the person that I should talk to get details about the project. And
this is why we need Ellie's suggestion.
And our next item, I'm just going to foreshadow a little bit, came from that misunderstanding, and we're trying to think about ways to make this process run a little smoother. I'm disappointed that we have such a small group and specifically are lacking the members that most need to hear that segment. But in any case, we were prepared to write the grant and went online to get the application, which was not there. So after an inquiry with Luis Cotto at MCC, Mass Cultural Council, it turns out that the transition to this new grant writing system and all of the other bureaucracy that goes along with this has been tough, and they just simply haven't gotten to it yet. That they got the GLC or the local cultural council grants up, and even on those they extended the deadline. So they basically just have not gotten to it yet. And Luis's latest estimate is that the application will open on November 1st.
Okay, will open on November 1st?
That was the latest that he gave us. So
Okay,
I'm going to assume that there's going to be at least 2 to 3 weeks where it'll remain open, probably more like a month.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as I'm concerned, the same ad hoc group can just stand and wait until it opens and then get it done. And I'm planning on Linda and I leading the grant writing with assistance from Ellie and Gretchen, who both expressed an interest in learning about the process. So we'll certainly weave you in for input as well where we can. But in the meantime, you'll at least get to participate and see how the sausage is made, as they say. So that is the current status on that. As far as I know, Linda, fuzzy
There.
connection
Did
there.
I
There you
freeze
back.
or did everybody else freeze? I don't know what
Nope, that
happened.
was you.
Okay,
Uh,
it was me. Hi again.
so, did you have anything to add to that update, Linda?
Just that it's kind of exciting. I mean, just to give a little bit of what our conference call, our Zoom call with Matthew was like, is that it seems that the idea of wayfinding against the dark wall doesn't really make any sense anymore because there are new lights that light the way underneath. And but what will be really cool is that there are going to be segments of light that can be set as a color underneath. So we really will be able to have a kind of beautiful lighting design of our choosing underneath there. So it'll sort of be like it's lit and illuminated, but it's also colorful coming into town. Those colors, of course, haven't been chosen or anything yet. We'll be able to do that together. But I think it's going to be really cool. Having heard it all the way through. The other thing that's really good news is it's going to be a little bit cheaper than we thought because we're not going to be able to do this stencil idea, but it'll just be the colors. But I think you're all going to really love it. It's going to be a really kind of magical way into town, whereas right now it's a little bit spooky coming in. So that's all.
Yeah. Linda, I'm curious, is it going to be mounted on the trestles themselves?
Yeah, so the way it looks like it's going to go is that, there are the metal girders. Is that the correct word, Steve? Right, that go all the way across on two sections. Within the middle, there's a street light. And there's a conduit that goes from the Energy Park sign over to that street light. And it looks like, at least Rach and Matthew thought that conduit was sort of the perfect place to bring the electricity. So yes, under the girders on those two sides.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean when I say that? Have you been under there and looked at it? It definitely is good for y'all because it helps people walk down to art space in a way that, will be much more cheerful for your business.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm actually trying to figure out a way to organize a group of people to keep that regularly clean because it's always.
I know schmutz always goes
not even
there.
litter. It's just leaves and branches
It's just detritus from the weather. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a lot, and it would be really nice to figure out a way. I don't know, Boy Scouts don't exist anymore and things like that, where you can call on them for stuff like that, but try and figure out.
Though Christy has said to me that, is it Kiwanis you threw at me one time, Christy, for something?
Well, there is the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. They do cleanups and stuff, and the jail, but obviously they're smaller numbers right now due to COVID. There's not as many available to help with that kind of stuff. But yeah, Kiwanis and Rotary, they do like cleanup days, or just the neighborhood. Like at Hillside, we've had the community neighborhood Hillside Block Group just together collectively do it.
Well,
Maybe the Downtown Neighborhood Association.
I can't get something together to do something about it because I mean, even regardless of art space, it's just really it's incredibly unattractive walking through there. It's not pleasant.
Right.
And it would be nice if that weren't so.
Right, because it's the gateway into our city. It's one of the main gateways.
One of them, yeah. And it would have been, I guess, 2019 now, before COVID, but the Downtown Greenfield Neighborhood Association did a cleanup downtown.
Yeah, they did.
So
but again, it's that situation where you get like once a year, and what Steve is talking about, it kind of needs to be once a month, which is, but Steve,
but they're amenable to that kind of work. They may be willing to set up a rotor.
Yeah. That's where I was going to, Rach. Yeah, exactly.
So I think that'd be a worthwhile contact. Steve, if you want to email me, I can give you some names over there, people to get you an introduction and see if we can get that on their agenda.
Okay. Is that still Otis, hun? Is Otis still?
I think Otis is still the main prime mover there, so to speak. Yeah.
Cool.
What is that organization that you mentioned?
The Downtown Greenfield Neighborhood Association, which is just residents, and it's like any other neighborhood association, really, except that being downtown, they have a different sort of set of challenges and things
I wonder if we could get. I mean, one of the other things is that the train tracks. There's growth that looms down over. I mean, it's grown up.
Mhm.
I assume that probably, I don't know if Pan Am is still the owner. I know they were
No,
trying
I
to
think we
sell.
learned that they're not
They're
anymore.
no longer they sold.
Mass DOT.
Mhm.
Okay. But I'm wondering if there would be pushback if we had people pruning.
You just can't go on the tracks. I know, like the energy park, basically we just prune along the fence where it's overgrowing, and I mean, there's so much trash and debris that people throw over our fence onto the tracks, and until they come, we can't really do anything with it
Okay.
because it's trespassing.
Right.
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 Linda, can I ask you a question about your project?
Yeah, go.
We never really talked about a time frame, but it's just temporary forever, correct? Until something
Yeah, I mean, it
changes,
should
right?
last. I mean, it should last 10, 15 years or so, before it needs to get replaced or repaired.
Perfect.
If it's like like my theater lights, I mean, I still have theater lights from 25 years ago. So I don't think it's going to be the kind of thing that is like, oh crap, this needs to be done again and done again and done again.
Great.
But probably in 10 years, it'll need to be, upgraded or whatever.
Mhm.
Good. I don't think we ever really talked about that. So
Yeah, no,
Curious.
that's a new topic, but it's a good one to bring up. But yeah, no, I don't think that's a concern. I think the bigger concern is going to be like, we've got to stop traffic under the bridge for an overnight to get Matt and his crew to be able to bang this out in a night or 2 nights. And I think that's gonna torque people out a little bit. But
Yeah.
but it's just,
That's
if
the
we've got,
biggest
that's what has
logistics
to happen.
challenge. I'm hoping we can do it with some traffic directing where we can have one lane open and
Yeah.
some traffic directing to make it work. But obviously we'll have to talk to DPW
Well, and the other thing
and the
too is
police
Matt is
the right way
totally
to do
willing to
that.
do it, from like midnight to 6 a.m. kind of, or 5 a.m. kind of a thing. He'll do it in the middle of the night.
Sure.
He's young.
Well,
Either-
we were talking about one aspect of the project. It's, well, I think maybe still in research a little bit, but if possible, we're going to have it so that you can go down there with a controller and potentially change
Yeah,
the
that's
colors of the lighting.
possible.
So
Yeah.
while it won't have the wayfinding, we may at least be able to, change the color scheme to recognize, like Pride Month, have it go rainbow and,
Exactly. But we
know,
did learn, y'all, that it won't be the kind of thing that, MJ can push a button in her office.
Yeah.
Some human will have to go down, be there, take the TV remote and boom, boom, boom. So it'll be a process to change the colors. So it won't be something we want to do every week, but for things like Pride a few times a year, it would be worth it.
If it involves any technology, it's going to be assigned to my grant program assistant.
Excellent. Christian will be very good at it.
Perfect.
Linda, I can just change the remote through my sunroof as I drive through.
Yeah, exactly. Just open the sunroof and just push the button. You'll be fine. Then we can have Christmas colors or Hanukkah colors or
You're gonna have
whatever
to
you
go up
want.
and then you're gonna have to come back down to do both sides. So it's gonna have to be a round trip.
Okay.
Exactly. But anyway, that is a possibility. It's a little bit of a complicated one, but it's a possibility, y'all.
Nice. Excellent. Thank you for all of that additional detail. Did anybody have any other questions, updates, concerns about the annual funding process? Okay, great.
So the mosaic is also part of that, and that's in the work
Correct.
now. And we know that the grant will fund things back to July 1st, even though they're in the works now. That's perfectly fine.
Yep. And there's additional work ongoing, and I think the way I'd have to go back and double check, but I think the way it was written, it was actually written for work that's yet to be done. So
Rach, just if like you don't have to dig into what the messiness is about the Mosaic project, but just so you know, Eggtooth actually made that happen, and I have all the contact information, and I don't know, intervene isn't the right word, but I could maybe smooth out the edges for you if you want,
no,
because I know
actually,
all those
it's
players.
totally fine. The person who I eventually got to there did a fine job, gave us everything we need. Clearly, somebody who's done applications of some kind before. The only issue was that Steve just wouldn't take responsibility to run his project, and
Yeah.
and I think, it's very little point in doing a lot with it today other than having it in the record. But the way it's become at least the custom of this committee to work is if you have a project, it's something that you want to bring forward. And it doesn't mean it has to be your hand doing every step, but it does mean that you're essentially appointing yourself project manager, if you will, and that there isn't an expectation that other members of the committee are going to do all the work. And that, if you need assistance, that we'll put together a team like we always do. But the idea is that every project needs somebody to shepherd it through. And if you care about the project enough to want it to be in our grant funding proposal, that's you. And that's the part that, like I said, is redundant for the people who made it this evening, with the possible exception of Ellie, for whom this may be new information. But some of the existing members of the committee just aren't getting that yet.
Well, here's a question.
Yeah.
If there doesn't seem to be a member of the committee that's going to drive the finishing of the mosaics, which, by the way, they're lovely as they are. I think if nothing more happened, they're elegant and beautiful, and Bob Markey did a great job, and Amy Timmons got her people together. Would it behoove us to consider throwing that money and splitting it between Winter Carnival and the lighting project so that we have less fundraising to do?
I'm certainly open to that discussion. I mean, speaking for myself, obviously it's a committee decision. I don't think there's a big challenge there, because at this point, from the committee's perspective, there isn't a lot required. Once the once the information is there to write the grant, the money goes to Bob Markey
Bob Markey.
and he's gonna
He
take
does the
care of
work.
whatever
Okay,
details
fine.
he
And I
needs.
take that back. I take that back because he's very responsible. He'll make it all happen. He's just a love. He's a big
Yeah.
love bug.
Well,
He'll
and I've
do it.
worked with him before as well, so
Yeah,
on
you
the
know. Yeah,
project.
you
So
know.
I have at this point, I don't foresee a need for any significant committee involvement other than writing up the completion, the summary that we have, the report
Cool.
that we have to do at the end of the
We can
year.
do
And
that. Yeah,
all we're
that's
going to
okay.
do is say the mosaic was placed as expected or
Right.
not.
Take
And
a
again,
picture.
Bob knows how to do the reports too. I mean,
The
he's
narrative.
he's,
Yeah,
he's done
he does.
more than a little public art stuff, so
Mhm.
he'll give us whatever we need to plug into the report
Okay.
when it's over.
All
So
right,
I'm not
great. So
worried
there's
about
really
that.
no issue there. It's just a little annoying.
So
It,
just
it,
trying to read between the lines. So I know we were kind of skirting around. So basically, the member who put this forward did not have all his T's and I's crossed for this amount. Is that correct? Is that what we're trying to say? And so
what
you
I'm
had to reach out to the artist to get everything that you need for the grant.
Well, it basically went like this. So what you provided for the Winter Carnival.
Yep.
That's of course perfect because you've done this many times, and that's what we need for every project.
Right.
And just to say it out loud so that it's in the record, it was a proposal that gave the language around the project, the budget, the timeline, everything you need to make a decision and fill out a grant application. It was a nice, tidy 2/3 of a page, and it was perfect. And that's what we need for every project in order to make the process smooth. And I thought I made that as clear as humanly possible to the member who brought that forward. And instead, what that member did was copy me and the artist on an email and said, Rach, meet so and so, and here you go. You're all set. Let me know if you need anything else. And that's, attempting to put the work on me to gather the information that you provided and Linda provided on her project, and this member just simply either didn't want to or didn't understand that that's what's required. And so I was hoping, Ellie and Linda and I have been in informal conversation about how we could formalize the process of bringing a project forward, although the impetus for that was really, the one member who just doesn't know how to do it, and thought perhaps if it was seen in writing, we might be able to get the point across, because we've certainly tried more than once in private conversations. I've had several. I think MJ's had a couple, and I suspect Caitlin has probably screamed at him once or twice as well. So I don't really know how to get through to that member. And
Well, I don't think we have to. I think the wonderful news, Ellie really came up with the perfect solution. And I don't want to speak for you, Ellie. I'll let you present your idea to the group. But I think you nailed it, girl. I mean, we just have to require a certain set of priorities, right? And Rach, you're with that program too, right, babe?
absolutely. And in fact, we've already just kind of slipped into the next item. But
Oh, here we go. We're sliding.
what I'm going to do is place into the chat the text of the idea that Ellie came up with and threw to me and Linda, and we said this is really great, but let's just save this for the meeting rather than doing this ex parte. And so I've placed it in the chat so that the full text of that's there. You can take a moment and read it if you want, but I'll forward it to the full committee now that it's been broached for discussion. I'll send that email once we break up. But the gist of it is that Ellie, do you want to describe how it would work? Or, I mean, if you don't want to speak, I'm happy to summarize it, but I don't want to speak for you if you want to do it.
Well, I see it in the chat, the text of the email that I sent to you and Linda, and just want to say that I can describe it, but really this vision is up for modification. I mean, it's just a first draft of an idea. So the idea is that we set up a shared Google Drive, and that there's sort of a pipeline of project proposals. And one folder in the drive contains completed proposals that have all the information that's necessary to make a project shovel ready. And I'm not that familiar with what all that is, but Linda, you guys all are much better than me. And then the other folder contains projects that are not yet ready to go for whatever reason, and they may never be ready to go. They're ideas, so they're a source of inspiration and discussion, and that the committee meetings themselves are devoted to really, ideally, only completed project proposals. And the other mechanism that I was thinking about that might, because I have a lot of ideas, but I have no idea how to get them completed and bring them forward to the committee, that I would love to sort of make a pitch for help during the committee, and that way maybe that discussion could be taken offline and someone would help me out with expertise. And sorry, I'm not really good at describing.
No, you're doing great.
Why don't you guys jump in and help me out?
Let me pick up the ball and see if I can move it another few yards down the field here.
Thank you.
I love the idea of I don't know, a library, if you will, of projects ready to go, and we can work on that all year long, right? We don't have to just have a panic in September about what we're going to do for projects. Ideally, this would be something we talk about every meeting. And, somebody raises a project idea and we can, bounce it around and say, yeah, I think we'd like to work more on that. Let's put it in the bike rack, which is the name that was just tentatively given to the unfinished project space. A lot of committees use a concept called a parking lot. But the parking lot, at least in all the committees I've ever served on, is more of a
graveyard.
It's a black hole more than a parking lot. Things go in and they don't come out. And a bike rack feels more like, you don't forget your car and your bike in the bike rack. You go back and get it, and it's in and it's out. So I like that as a kind of a transient holding place and where things can be developed and worked on. And I especially like the idea of, some information about how to bring a project forth that we can develop and add to as time goes on, including a a template, and that might be something we can even sort of extract from, the grant writing process this year. If we look at, okay, this is what has to go into a grant, so how do we make a simplified version of that for our template that we can use for members? The other thing that excites me about it is once we formalize it a little bit, it can be perhaps a starting point, at least, for how we can open up this granting process further, because ultimately this doesn't have to be just a committee task. We could be soliciting ideas from the community, just like the local cultural council does, and we'll need mechanisms in place to take those applications when the time comes. So all the templates and the holding spaces and the different folders can, I think, become part of that as time goes on. The first thing that I would want to check, though, is a clarification if we have any issues with the sort of record keeping that's, is having a Google folder, Google Drive with Google Docs in it. It's not part of the city's record keeping. Are we creating any, transparency, record keeping type issues with something like that as a working folder?
Only if there's discussion and, if there's discussion among members. So I think that if you had a Google Drive and you park something in there, the way you'd have to manage that is have at your meetings coming up and sort of having the discussion there. It doesn't, inevitably people will have phone conversations. You just don't want to, you can't have it in the context of that Google Drive. Ellie might have something in the bike rack and she runs into Linda on the street and they chat about it. Not a public record violation. But if they're having this conversation back and forth in Google Drive, then it could be a violation. So
here's a question, MJ. Do you feel it would be appropriate to add this simple task to Christian's life? And that's okay?
It would be
okay.
fine.
Because
no, I think you've heard from me unequivocally that we're trying to figure out how we can best support the work that you guys are doing without being in the middle of it.
Great.
Our
That would be
goal
one
is
great
to
way.
make it easy, create a process, but also make sure that you're tuned into the open meeting laws and public record requirements that we have to be respectful of.
Well, what I would suggest is that, and this might be a motion, but slap me down if it's not right, is that maybe what we do is we give our priorities, our little list of whatever it is, 5 things, and we give it to Christian. So he builds a spreadsheet that he feels good about, overseeing, and then just allows us to link to it and not edit the sheet, but, put information in as it comes up. And then just very simply, what we go over when we have one of these meetings is we go over the spreadsheet. So there's nobody showing up and saying, I want to have a mural in a skate park that's going to be built in 3 years, that kind of thing. Sorry, that was a little bit, sorry, that was my outside voice.
All good.
Ellie, don't put that in there.
We've all got some feels about that.
So, you know what I mean? Everything goes through the spreadsheet.
So I think.
So can I have the floor a second, Rachel?
Absolutely,
yeah,
please.
So I think that the concept is great. I know from my profession, like we have all kinds of forums and that kind of stuff, but it really becomes a dialogue conversation. I think that what we need to do is that for these proposals, and I know, Rachel, you made it very clear multiple different times, multiple different years that we've applied for any sort of grant, that you need to have what the project is, what the timeline is, what the costs are, and the description. Those are really the things that we need. And when it comes time for September vote, if anybody has a proposal and they don't have it, then we just don't fund them. I think that's what it needs to be, that simple. Like, we probably shouldn't have given money to him if he did not have everything organized. And we were just kind and generous, hoping that he would come through. It's a pattern. We've seen it. We know that next time, sadly, if he doesn't have it, I don't think we should support him. Plain and simple. I am old-fashioned, even though I may look young. I'm not fond of all these shared drives and documents. There's too many different things from too many different groups. I would rather just have a file that we say, hey, what did she say? Decorate a chicken coop or something, I think in this chat, like we can talk about that and then we can say branch off and say, okay, well, who wants to work with Ellie on coming up with a decorate a chicken coop project? I'd rather do that than have this shared document. And we have so many different people with so many different skill sets with technology that I think are going to get lost. But I like the concept of form. You can just say you need A, B, and C, as I just went through. Like, this is what we need to really discuss, hash out a project, and you need to have these completed to submit for funding.
I don't disagree with that. Let me add something to that and use that also as a segue to throw it to MJ, because I want to make sure we're on the right side of your department as well. I think the idea of having a workspace for the committee is useful, even if it's only used for storing the template that we use for writing up new projects. We're going to generate some documents, and I think having some place to store them is good. And I think that should be something that Christian sets up, utilizing a resource that isn't going to change every time a committee member changes, right? Like, as any of us can start a Google Drive, but if I leave the committee, then I don't want committee stuff in my Google Drive anymore. So it's no good to do it by individuals. If the city can just establish the location, whatever the right thing is, if that's Google Drive, if there's another way that, the city manages stuff like that, so that we could just fit in with that. And then as
Can I respond to that? Because I just want to tell you that we just did that. The city just established the Community Preservation Commission, and Christian is the staff support to that, and that's exactly what he's done. So he's actually just done that, where it's a resource for everybody who's on the CPC can go into the Google Drive. We've loaded up all the, the sustainable greenfield and the open space and recreation plan, all the plans that everybody wants to see on that committee. And Christian is the only one who loads stuff up into that. And there's no conversation that happens among committee members or commentary within that. Everything is just a resource place where people can go and get access to the documents.
Got it. I could buy into that. And then, so what would need to happen, or tell me if this is correct, what would need to happen is we would have criteria. We would have our 4 things that we need. And if a community member has a project, they can reach out to one of us and share those 4 things in the form of an email or a written snail mail letter, whatever it might be, or a conversation. And then we would communicate to Christian should it pass muster, kind of a thing. Is that where the conversation is kind of going, everybody, just so that I can clarify in my mind?
Well, the other place I would see it doing is if you had a sort of standard template of what you need for information, that it wouldn't have to go through the committee members. I mean, if people said, hey, I want to see if this idea will float with the cultural district grant, they can actually, Christian can send them out, the application and the information that they need to submit, and be able to sort of track that in support of what you're doing.
Got it.
So
Christy, how does that feel with you, with your old-fashioned soul, sweetie? How does that sit with you?
I think that's perfect. And Ellie, please, I hope I didn't offend you. I just think that we were being too nice, not to put this in the minutes. Like, we know the problem, and let's just, not let the problem give us a pain in the neck, like.
And it might really, Christy, along those lines, it might really come down to just a really blunt, clear, you have not, person who we're talking about, you have not done what needs to be done, and so we can't take up time in the meeting with that.
I'm going to jump in here.
I'd
like to not derail the meeting into discussion of the person that should.
No, right, but I mean, would it make sense to just not continue whatever that conversation might be and take up meeting time with it? You know what I mean?
I think, Steve, I've got you in queue here. Give me just 1 second to wrap that to an end. I think once we have an application form, then we can just hand it to them. Say, look, you want to bring an idea to the committee, fill one of these out, and then there's no discussion. Steve, I'm sorry. Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, no, my question would be, so if a community member, just say in January, comes up with an idea that they just are really excited about, and they download everything and they've got it in there, it just sort of sits until September, and then theoretically one of us advocates for them. I'm just not sure how it would work. That's all. I imagine there will be people who will want to submit things, and I'm just wondering how that would work. I mean, do they need to then find an advocate among the committee members, or do we invite them to present?
I think we've got a few things.
I like this idea. I think it's really workable, and then it leaves it open to the community. I'm just wondering how that would work when it comes down to the wire, because then they have this idea and they would certainly want to advocate for it. I'm just kind of curious how we would work that.
I'd like to, rather than try to hash this all out during the meeting, because not that there aren't a lot of good ideas coming, I'd like to establish a working group on this. I'd love to see Ellie on it, obviously, since this is your idea. And I think we can put you in contact with Christian, who can, you two can work on getting the resources set up. And then how we subdivide and use that resource, I think, is where the working group can start to lay out some ideas and, bring a more ready proposal for that process to the next meeting. And then we can refine it from there. But I think starting with a blank page tonight is just going to be a lot of talking. I do see, some subdivisions of that resource. One might simply be for finished applications, so that it's just a matter of going into that folder and seeing what applications are in there, contacting the people who submitted them. So I think those answers will start to fall out as you work through the mechanics of how to set it up. Yes, MJ.
No, and I was going to say that you have the perfect opportunity to launch this process as as we get the confirmation that that they're going to fund what you're putting in right now. That at the time we say, these grants come up every year. We look to make, the application is usually due in the fall. You should start, get application ideas and know that this is the time frame where it might have to happen in. So you can set a goal for yourselves of having a process in place by the time you're announcing your grant awards. I think you'll be in great stead.
I think so. That sounds right to me. Linda?
And one little thing, Steve, that happens with the GLCC, which might sort of alleviate your thoughts, is that whenever there's a grant proposal for the GLCC that that I can't understand when I read through, it sort of falls on the position of the chair to clarify and to be that conduit. So that, I'm not saying that will be the way it goes, but that is the way it has worked in the GLCC, and it may be what tends to happen here.
Yeah. Christy?
I was just going to say, and also Steve, I think you're right that one of us can be an advocate for a project, and we can also invite whoever it is to do a presentation. So I think it will be a combination of different things.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out because that's what occurred to me as we sort of hashed it out, because I think the process that we're looking at right now is a good one.
Yeah, I think once you get open to the public, then the process may have to get a little bit more involved. And again, that's something that maybe the working group can hammer out, but it might be a multi-step process. So, we might take a first call of everything that's been submitted, narrow it down to some smaller number that we then invite in to present before we make our final decisions. So lots of opportunities to refine that process. Who wants to work with Ellie on working that out? Steve, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And of course,
I think Gretchen. Gretchen wanted to. Gretchen wanted to work on the grant. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So and who knows? She might get intrigued by this as well and want to join in. But of course, all the other resources of the committee are available to you, Ellie. So any questions you have, you can ask me or Steve or MJ, and we'll get you to the resources you need. And you're not on your own by any means, but we'll just see what you guys come up with for how this might work. Steve has quite a bit of experience also with managing grant-funded organizations, so I think you'll have a lot of insights to be able to bring to that process.
And Rachel, how would you describe the purpose of this working group then?
I would love if the working group would come back with first priority, how we should structure our record keeping and manage our grant writing process. And then as a secondary priority, how that might expand to being able to accept applications from the general public.
And when you say how, do you mean more the technological infrastructure and how we are,
The
how we keep that in compliance with public transparency issues?
Yeah, how we utilize that information. I think essentially, refining what you started in that email that you wrote, and fitting that in with what Christian and MJ make available for resources, and then just essentially formalizing what you've already started with some additional input from Steve and others of us as needed, to bring some experience with grant writing to the framework that you've already kind of laid out.
Now I wonder, maybe I wonder if Chrissy might want to be on the group, or maybe I should talk to her, be able to talk to Chrissy about your concerns, because your vision was not, I had this vision for, shared files, and you were not into the shared files. So
yes, you can certainly, I can join you and Steve, Ellie, on this small work group or whatever Rachel called it. Yeah, I would be happy to do that. Like all my programs, we have forms for everything, proposals for everything. I write and submit a lot of grants. So I think it's just a form. We just need a template for those that are interested in applying for some grant that we would support, some art project. That's really what it is.
And Christy, your comments about it I understand completely. So I agree. So I think, keeping it as simple as possible and as accessible as possible is really important.
So
yeah, Ellie, I'd be glad to help you guys.
Okay.
Great. Thank you to all three of you for being willing to take that on. So let's set as a hoped for deliverables, and this is hoped for. If it's not by November, that's fine. We'll keep working on it. We're at the right time of year where we have some leeway, but let's hope for a basic project form. Does not have to be fully prettied for the public, but can just be an internal working document to start with, and then we can expand upon that with the additional verbiage to make it, comfy for the public who's never done it before. But we'll have some template that we can use internally at least. And I can say that simply starting with what Christy submitted to the committee for her proposal is pretty much just, take out the specifics and leave the framework, and that's pretty much your template, because it was really concise and had everything we needed. And then the other deliverable would be, let's just, again, we'll start small, and let's just say a storage location for committee work with understanding of how access is done, whether that's through Christian or whether we have individual access or we have read access, but Christian can add stuff, whatever that works out to be, that we have some storage system set up and a template, and we can just continue building on it from there.
And I had a question for MJ. My original idea was to provide basically a pipeline of ideas, sort of a collection, like a database of ideas that we would draw on over time so that we didn't lose track of them. And then it sort of changed to be a tool that could help us manage how projects were brought forward as well. But I'm returning to my original idea of a file that contained ideas in progress. And so this is my question for MJ. If we had a file of ideas, undeveloped projects, and we had that in a shared space, and the committee members went in and added a page or two when they had ideas or they saw something neato that they read about in the paper, and they put it in this file. It was our idea book. If that was maintained on a public, not a public site, a site that we all had access to, and then maybe distributed in advance of each committee meeting for people just to look at. I'm not saying that we'll do that, but I'm saying, would that be in violation of any of these public records and transparency rules? So there's a shared file that we add things to for inspiration and discussion. And then for every meeting, it's distributed to everyone on the committee. Or what aspect of that would be in violation if there was an aspect that was in violation?
The aspect that would be in violation if there was active discussion about the different ideas that people were adding to that list. So if you had this idea and someone said, oh, I saw this, you guys might be interested in this, that was relative to that idea. If everyone's sort of throwing their 2 cents in, but not discussing it among yourselves, it's the discussion and deliberation that becomes problematic. The adding of information, I think, is not problematic. So if there was a shared file where ideas to keep in the percolator, and people kept throwing things in and might add a thread to a specific idea that's there, as long as it's being shared and not discussed and deliberated, I believe you're fine. That's my understanding. It's when it's the active discussion of like, I don't like that idea, or oh, that wouldn't work, they tried it, you know, that type of discussion needs to happen in meetings.
Okay.
Rather than in the Google Drive. And it's real, I know, and I speak from personal experience, it's very human to want to react to things like that. But that's the thing I have to caution you against.
And does it matter how many people?
Add information, but you can't discuss or deliberate it.
Does it matter how many people are talking? You said that Linda and I could meet on the street and talk about it. But does it matter if there's 3 or 4 or 5? Is there a threshold? Or is it more like you know it when you see it, like it's not right?
No. It's when the concept becomes more of a decision made outside of a group. So if the three, you know, you and Linda are standing on the street and deciding something, you see Rachel and you pull it over and say, hey, at the next meeting, let's all decide to do this. That would be problematic. But I think, you know, I'm not going to try to regulate free speech on public sidewalks. But the concept is that when there's discussion or deliberation and decision making, it should be in a venue that's public to people, that's available and accessible to people, should they choose to look into it, should they choose to observe it.
And just to add to that, I think maybe you can say that the distinction is it's okay to discuss stuff, to develop ideas, to bounce things back and forth. It's not okay to decide things, to talk about deciding things, to strategize who's, you know, to whip the votes, to talk about how you can swing somebody's vote. Any of those conversations are clearly going to be in violation. So but just, you know, if somebody puts up an idea that says, you know, I think we should hang a giant star in the middle of Main Street, and somebody else says, well, but what if it was, instead of a star, it was a star in a circle? I think that you can probably, MJ, does that seem like the sort of thing you can develop?
You know, I want to remind you guys, you are a cultural council. I don't know that I want to nickel and dime the definition. I'm just trying to convey the general sense that decision making should be open and transparent as much as possible, and that democracy works when people talk to each other, even informally.
So I think, Ellie, if we just have a list of ideas, that's fine. We just can't talk about them together unless we're in a meeting like this.
Yeah, it seems really pretty simple what we could come up with. To me, I'm seeing something that looks very, very simple. And it's something that if each member of the board, the committee can access over the course of the year, we come into the September meeting really well informed about what the proposals are. We know already who has not done their work. We don't even have to discuss those. And we can contact, you know, if they're public members who have submitted something, we can have a format for them to have an advocate or to come in and advocate for their proposal. It seems,
Well, and if you put it formally on your agenda that you're talking about what's in the bike rack, I mean, that sort of tells people that, there's a place where you're receiving ideas and sharing them, and that can be made public.
Yeah. And we can make a bike rack review a standing agenda item if we want. So
Can we change the name? Because hello, I'm a parky here, and I'm like, what are we doing with a bike rack? I was like, literally.
okay,
Who's bringing
Call it
their
the
bike?
bike rest, like the bike rest that we have at the little pocket park by the garage, the bike rest.
add a third deliverable to the working group's delegation. You're to come back with a better name for the storage location.
we'll see what we can do.
All right, excellent. I see us at 7:05 and at the end of the agenda. Looking forward to what the working group comes back with. Again, this is not a high pressure deadline situation. So if you have unfinished ideas that need committee discussion, let me know. We'll get it on the agenda for next month. Either way, we'll put something on the agenda to at least, whether it needs development or simply reporting.
One thought from Christy.
Could I just ask a quick question? I should have said it under public comment, I guess. Rachel, you said in the fall we were going to get another bee. Do you know, can you give us a quick update? Is that still happening?
Oh yeah, what's the bee story?
So the bee that we had hoped to roll out in the fall slipped on schedule because Cow Painters, the company that makes the forms, like everybody else, is getting brutalized by labor and supply chain problems, and they weren't able to deliver it to us until right around the end of August. So we missed both the fair and the Green River Fest that we had hoped to display it for. It is, however, still in process and underway, and will be rolled out in the spring, coincident with Bee Fest again. And that is the quilting bee.
Yeah.
That was what we originally as a committee chose as our alternate.
That was the alternate, yeah.
And it was not forced since this was a private purchase with no grant money and outside the cultural district. I left it to the customer, who's Greenfield Savings, to pick the artist. And they do have an idea that they want to move forward for another bee, but they weren't able to get it done in this time for this one, so they threw it back to me, and I said, well, I can put out a call to artists, but let me first show you what the committee had picked for an alternate. And they said, great, go for it. So we're getting quilting bee for the spring. It's going to be installed in the garden area on the parking lot side of Greenfield Savings Bank by their other entrance. I can also report, I don't know if this is ready to publicize. It's obviously going to be a matter of public record for being in the meeting, but I think we should probably not leak it to the paper. We are going to have a movie-themed bee out in front of the Garden Cinema somewhere, sponsored by the Garden Cinema. And I'm told that there's a decent possibility of at least a third, possibly another Greenfield Savings one. The idea that they didn't get to do that they really want to do is a tribute to Eric Carl.
Oh yeah.
Passed this year.
Yeah, who died.
So I'm definitely eager to see that one go. And there's at least a tickle that there might be one from TD Bank. We'll see.
Yeah, the
and
banks are getting competitive.
Well, all the banks have got to have one, right?
Yeah.
Too early to get our hopes up on, but it's out there. I will add, since Christy brought it up, it's the 19th today. My deadline for getting bees for next spring is the end of the month. So if anybody knows a potential sponsor that they think, is worth making the full pitch to, get with me. I can either give you materials to help you make the pitch, or you can give me a contact name so I can go in and try to close it. But the time frame on that is short, just 10 days from now, essentially. The bees are $5,500 a piece to sponsor at this point, because now we don't have any grant funding backing it up, so the sponsor has to pay the whole ride. But that's what you get for waiting to see instead of being on the early adopter status here.
Right.
So, and there's plenty of big organizations that could use this kind of good publicity. To me, it's not going to be the restaurants or the few stores that are on Main Street. It's going to be the
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 banks,
banks, the energy companies, the grocery stores,
insurance,
the medical facilities,
medical.
all those kind of places. There really needs to be a Sandry bee. I can't believe that we don't have a contact over there to make that happen.
Oh, we do. I can connect you.
So, if I had a name, I'd make the pitch. There really ought to be a Sandry bee. There ought to be a Patriot Care bee, although that's a challenging person to pitch
Yeah,
to.
I
But
don't think we're going to get a Patriot Care bee. But
anyway,
I can get you some contact info about Sandry, though. I'll
that's
send you an
great. And
email.
perfect. And if anybody else has any other, reasonably solid ideas, I don't have a million hours to do a lot of cold calling, but if you can get me as far as a contact name, what we would call a warm lead in the sales world, if you can get me a warm lead, I'll close it out if I can. So
Great.
would love to see as many as possible. I mean, ultimately, we should have bees all over town. I'd like to see us get up towards 20. If we can get to 15, 18, 20, in that kind of range, now that's enough to really, that'll get the chamber on board to bring tourism money in, and people will come to see that many bees, I think.
Swarm.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately, I mean, thinking real long term, part of my goal in building up the Bee Fest and the bee branding on the city was that as we start to add things like conference space, which we don't actually have in the city right now, we could make a go to get the National Beekeeper Organization to hold their annual conference here, right? And there's NASB as well, who holds conferences and things. So we can actually begin to attract business to the city as well as potentially tourists. So that's kind of the big picture there. And we did see that a little bit. The fair this year for the parade did a bee theme, and I had nothing to do with that. The Bee Fest people had nothing to do with that. It's a sign that the idea is taking hold.
Yeah.
That there's buy-in within the community. So that's exciting to me. And I'm working on putting together a paint your own bee kit that we can sell.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great.
And I'm gonna talk to I guess it's the chamber probably. They do the Christmas ornaments every year as the chamber, I think, right? So I'm gonna have a conversation with them and see if they
The
want to do it.
GBA.
Is that the GBA?
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
But
well, I'll talk to
they
Rachel
haven't
then.
done them the last couple of years.
Well,
So no.
give me an excuse to call Rachel and catch up with her. So unless anybody has anything else, yeah, Christy.
The last thing I just want to say, so that everyone knows, that the downtown Rag Shag Parade and trick or treating is on Saturday, October 30th. So it's like almost a week away.
Great.
So
Excellent.
get your candy ready, Rach.
I'm gonna try, MJ.
Just to add on to that, there's a lot of stuff that's happening in the downtown. Visit greenfieldma.com is really populated with a lot of stuff. Christy, your LL Bean pop-up shop got approved tonight at licensing for the 13th and 14th, which will be the Bean Boot in downtown. We should make sure that there's bees all over that Bean Boot. You know that? We'll get the GSB to give us a bunch of their little bees and they can buzz around there. And then just next Tuesday night is a business expo in downtown Greenfield and Court Square and Hawks and Reed. So if folks are wandering around, I have a table. We'll put stuff out about, the cultural district and the stuff we do with the downtown. So, and you guys are, and I've got to get the fresh map to you guys so you can see the full boundaries and mark that out clearly on what the cultural district is. It was expanded without controversy. So you're much bigger. You have a little bit of a larger turf than you used to.
Cool. More room to play.